the dust settles on Saturday's historic election, both Labor and the Coalition are looking at distinctly different party rooms. While Anthony Albanese will be adding more than a dozen MPs, the Coalition's horror result has seen many members losing their seats, mostly from the moderate faction of the party. So how will both parties regroup after the nation had its say?
For more, we're joined by 7 National News Desk Director Hugh Whitfeld and journalist Suzanne Mostyn. Hugh, before we go, mate, incredible coverage from you on the election. Well done. Coalition in crisis management mode as they figure out how to appeal to a whole new demographic, right? They've lost grip. Does the new makeup of the party signal anything for you? What are you getting at this point?
Look, I think what is left of the Coalition, the Liberal Party in particular, is the Conservative wing, particularly in Queensland, where most of their MPs will come from now. They have vacated ground in metropolitan areas of Sydney and Melbourne in particular. They've been wiped away in Tasmania, and there's not much left of the Libs in South Australia as well. The key thing for the recovery of the Liberal Party in the next probably 10 years, to be honest, is trying to claw back into the centre ground. You hear people talking all the time about the Liberals having to return to their Conservative roots, but that's where they are now. That is what is left of the Libs. The Teals in the new parliament will still be there. They've effectively lost all of their power because the Labor majority is so big. Anthony Albanese never has to speak to the Teals again if he doesn't want to. But those Teals occupy the ground in places like Sydney and Melbourne where the Liberal Party must reach into to recover that moderate centre ground where if they're ever to get back to a majority status in Parliament, they have to return to those areas.
How do they do that, though? How do they even begin to do that?
I think they'll be looking outside the parliamentary party right now. Who is there in the Australian community, whether it's the business community or in those parts where it's the eastern suburbs of Sydney or the North Shore of Sydney or Melbourne, to see who can they tap to bring into Parliament as a future leader, because there isn't really anyone left there right now.
Suze, the face of Labor will also change with so many new MPs in their midst. Should we expect to see business as usual from Anthony Albanese?
Damn right, Carl. Yeah, damn right, Carl. The Canberra bubble, I can tell you this morning, has burst and it's reshaped incredibly. Walking through Parliament House this morning, you can actually sense what I'm calling the BME, the big majority energy. It is palpable, but with also a layer of devastation from the Liberals. And you can almost hear, pardon me, their new theme song, which is Landslide. You know, the landslide brought me down. It's a real shift in this building. And Anthony Albanese must now, because, as Hugh just said, he has a mandate, he can govern outright. Labor must deliver on all of their promises. You cannot have that kind of landslide and then not deliver to the people who got you there in the first place. As for the Liberals, Hugh, I reckon it's a poison chalice. Whoever gets it, whether it's Susan Lee as a woman and a more moderate person who has no support now within that smaller Liberal Party, or whether it's Andrew Hastie, who's young, inexperienced, or the old guard of Angus Taylor and Dan Tehan, they are yesterday's men. You've really got to have an issue to find somebody. Yes, Hugh, you're right. If they're in big business, if they've got a real vision, but the next few years, the Liberals are in the wilderness. They've lost the cities. They've lost the younger vote. They're decimated. They're devastated.
All right, guys, let's move on. There's been back and forth from ministers on both sides about what factors decided this election, from nuclear energy to Donald Trump and the cost of living, of course. Suze, is it possible to say which issue made this such a divisive Labor victory, do you think?
Yeah, so many, Laz, as you said, the spectre of Trump. Pardon me. I think it was. I stayed up late on Saturday night watching the coverage, so I've actually lost my voice. I was very chatty yesterday as well. But yeah, definitely Trump, the spectre of the fear of change and what we have seen in the US. The Liberals, they were just so misguided in their campaigning. Lots of pratfalls and backflips and mistakes, and also a perception problem for Dutton. He's always had it, that image issue. issue. And now we actually have, you know, a thing that's more about like a presidential campaign. It is about man-to-man, head-to-head. What are these blokes like? People make superficial judgments, but they thought he's too much, Dutton, of a hard man. He doesn't represent me. I can't connect to him. He's not relatable. Sadly, we saw the human side of him in his concession speech. Needed to do that a lot sooner. Albo's got the mandate. But yeah, I think people went, better the devil you know. Not saying that Labor is a devil, but it was seen as a safe pair of hands, whereas the opposition, oh my God, that's fear there.
Hugh, the Donald Trump factor loomed large towards the back end of the campaign. How big of a role do you think that played?
I think Conservative politicians around the world have kind of looked at Donald Trump over the last decade and seen it as a tantalising prospect to kind of tear through government, tear it down, reduce the size of government as Donald Trump is trying to do in America. The reality is, a couple of months into the Trump administration, people are sitting back around the world and going, whoa, 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 this is a little bit more perhaps than what they had thought might happen. And Trump's politics in America doesn't play well outside of America. And I think what people tend to forget is that Donald Trump appeals to people who don't live in the big cities in America, who don't live in LA, who don't live in New York. The problem in Australia for politicians is that more than a third of all Australians live in Sydney or Melbourne. They live in big cities, in metropolitan areas, and you've got to play to where people are.
OK. Finally, it was a surprising result, not just for the major parties, with the Greens losing at least 2 seats despite lifting their national vote count. Hugh, how will Adam Bandt be interpreting Saturday's result for his party? What's going through his mind today?
Well, I know the Greens are trying to justify the big losses that they've suffered by saying it's the Liberals' fault, that the people who have turned away from the Liberals have not gone to the Greens, they've gone to Labor, and that's obvious from the majority that Labor has enjoyed. But what is clear is that the Greens continue to be a party of protest, that people go to the Greens to register a dissatisfaction with either Labor or the coalition. Labor has benefited from the fact that people want to see a Labor government, and the only way that you achieve voting for the government that you want is by backing the party who's most likely to form government in line with your views. And the Greens are never going to be, in probably the next, you know, many decades to come, they're never going to produce a Prime Minister. Adam Bandt was never going to be Prime Minister, and the Greens have suffered for that.
So as Hugh kind of touched on this earlier, a large number of independents in the chamber again. Labor's big win means, of course, they wield less power this time round. What does that mean for the future of this traditional two-party system, given that we do need an effective opposition to have great government for us, the people?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it says the old Democrat Party doesn't exist anymore. You know, under Don Chipp, it was keep the bastards honest. And now the independents don't have the power to do the horse trading that they have traditionally in the past. So now the independents must try to keep the brakes on you know, the government being all powerful and making some terrible judgments and mistakes. But yeah, they have to still represent the people who got them through this time. And the independents, as I said, a lot of younger, socially progressive voters want to see those independents. Now, they're not fearful of what it means to not be aligned with either of the major parties. In fact, it's seen as a real benefit. But then again, we're seeing people like Jackie Lambie. She's in the fight of her life. Zoe Daniel in Victoria, same thing. It's line ball at the moment. And they may not get over the line. We'll see what happens. But there is one thing to be said, and that is this history has been made on both sides. Albo, a historic win, one for the ages, but also Peter Dutton, a decimation and devastation so full that it means that he will go down as nothing more than a cautionary tale. That will be his legacy. So lots of changes. Lots of opportunity for the Liberal Party, but they are walking in the wilderness at the moment. Their numbers are down. They do not know what has just hit them, and they'll be looking for somebody who can lead them through, who will not potentially win an election for another 10 years. So that's a long wait. You've got to regroup. You've got to really just clear the decks and say, how do we connect? How do we find our soul? How do we find our heart? What matters to us now as a Liberal Party in an inclusive, diverse, modern world?
Guys, terrific hit out. We could talk to you for hours, but we've got to get back to normal morning show programming. We got the Met Gala and Meghan Markle's about to release a new strawberry jam. So we really got to get a hustle on here, guys.
We're going to pack down your wall that you operated so brilliantly. What was it?
The power board.
The power board, that's right. So we're still dismantling the power board. Great job, Hugh, and to the entire team.
Yes.
If you don't mind, I would love the power board as a television in my bedroom. So if you could have that packed up and sent off to my house, that'd be great.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.